This free real estate mastermind is your opportunity to show up with questions, thoughts, anything I can do to help you build your business. I'm committed to helping you do it. Show up Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Central at zoomwithrob.com, and I'll see you there. Welcome to the Impossible to Fail Real Estate Mastermind. Another episode of the Impossible to Fail Real Estate podcast or mastermind. Excuse me. I just finished a podcast. My brain is still transitioning. We're on the mastermind here, and welcome to another episode. I got to tell you, it is no coincidence that the people that show up to this thing every single week are the people that are actually achieving serious success because they're committed to investing time in their business. And that's what so many people fail to realize. One question I ask frequently, now I bet none of y'all are going to raise your hand on this call, but I'll ask, if you're at my session today, raise your hand if you're taking time out of your business to be here. See, nobody raised their hand on this call because they know that they're not taking time out of their business to be here. They're investing time in their business to be here, because when they actually implement what they learn, they're going to go out and make money. And every single person on this call has made money implementing what they've learned. And so they understand the value of being here because they learn new things that they can go and take and actually accomplish the things that they want to. So thanks for being here, gang. And of course, the replays are always on the YouTube channel. So let's start with some wins, because I always want to start with some good news. Who had a win over the past week that they want to share?
Rob, I closed on a referral deal. So I didn't close, but the referral closed. So I got paid for that.
Nice.
And I went into agency agreements this past week, and I'm getting ready to go on a third.
Boom. So you got 2 exclusive rep agreements in the past week, and you got paid on a referral deal. How did the referral deal come about?
So it was, ironically, I've just been a little too busy because I've been implementing it to Orbit. And I just didn't have the capacity to take on somebody who needed a home like yesterday. And they needed a lot of time invested in them. And I was working with the other clients that also needed that same kind of time. So I just didn't have the capacity. Handed it off to a partner agent in the area, and they just closed.
So for those of you watching this that maybe don't know Matt's backstory, which you probably do because I brag on him all the time, less than 6 months ago, he invested in the course, had closed a few deals, didn't have anything in the pipeline, wasn't really sure if he was going to be able to make a consistent go of this thing or not. Less than 6 months later, he's averaged 1 closing a month, has 12 additional rep agreements, not including closed and pending deals, and was so busy that he just closed and got a fat referral fee because he was too busy to handle another client. I mean, that is textbook getting into orbit in such a short amount of time. Congratulations, Matt. That's awesome. Well done, man. Who has another win from the past week they want to share?
I hosted an open house. Sorry, dealing with the sickness right now.
Everybody is right now, dude.
And I went for the listing the appointment at the open house. They didn't have time. Well, they reached out to me the other day and want me to list their home and buy their new one closer to their family.
Let's go, Kenneth. Another one who recently joined the Earth to Orbit program, came to the mastermind a little bit, really wanted to see if it was right for him. And I feel like every single call, you're either in the car doing something or you just got back with a win. So this time you hosted an open house. You used the at the open house script and the ABC script to set the appointment. Weren't able to set it at the open house itself, but you followed up diligently, and then they called you, and now you're going to be listing their home and helping them buy a new one. 2 transactions out of that one. Boom. My gosh, Kenneth, I'm so proud of you, man. Congratulations. And again, he's getting the results because he's implementing what he's learning. Knowledge without implementation is useless, but the people on this call actually go and they implement and they get really dramatic results in a short amount of time. Kenneth, that's amazing, dude. Congratulations, man. That's fantastic. Good. Anyone else have a win they want to share? Let's get one more. Matt Solis, give us a win that you've had in the past week, because I know you're just taking action every day.
I went to a subject 2 class on Saturday, and I was just learning about this new way to invest. And then I met a guy at this subject 2 that wants to sell me his house. It's off market, and it's gonna potentially make a great house hack. This is not exactly a realtor win, but it's a investment win. So I've been busy running some numbers and some comps for that, and we're potentially going to do a deal. Nothing for sure yet. But as far as real estate, I mean, I did an open house. It was pretty slow. I only had maybe 3 people come through, and I met one good lead. I'm having a lot of trouble when I do my ABC script. I can't get them to set an appointment at the open house. It's a lot of times they're like open to the idea of it, but I can't get them to commit there.
Gotcha. We're going to circle back to that to see how we can help you do that further. But your win, while not a real estate agency win, is still a win, because a win is really getting what you want. That's the definition of winning. Matt, aside from being an agent, is an investor, and one of Matt's primary skill sets is working with investors, because he has this investor skill set of his own, and he still went out, got educated at a class, made a connection there, maximized the connection. That's going to turn into money in his pocket. So yeah, that's a huge win. That's absolutely wonderful. Congratulations. Now, before we get into some questions, I'm going to circle back to my man, Larry, because last week on the Mastermind, Larry was talking about how he was a little bit stuck in analysis paralysis, and we gave him an assignment, and I promised Larry at the beginning of this call, I would ask, how many one-to-ones did you schedule? So Larry, give us the update.
Well, frankly, I didn't have a real good week, but I did get one-to-one. I had an opportunity to go visit with my the manager at the branch of the credit union I bank at.
Wow.
I had some questions about my account, and of course she answered all of those. And as I was getting up to leave, I turned around and I said, by the way, Annette, who do you know that is looking to buy a home, sell a house, or invest in real estate? And she says, well, I don't know anybody right now, but I can think about it for you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, so you had a one-to-one with the manager of the credit union, which, by the way, when we talk about one-to-ones, we talk about scheduling one-to-ones with key players, people that know a lot of other people. So the manager of the credit union, right? People are going to be coming into the credit union talking about loans. Maybe they want to qualify for a mortgage. And so by getting to know the manager, you are by extension getting to know pretty much all of the people that go there. So that was still a win. And now you've planted that seed. Now I would encourage you to continue to follow up with that manager. At least once every 3 months, you want to have another in-person. You want to pop in there, and you want to make sure that you stay on her radar, because she can recommend you now to anyone else she knows of. And as a manager of a credit union, likely she's going to know of some people at some time. So good work. You still implement it. So good job there. Good. So let's get on to some questions that y'all brought to the table. I'm going to go ahead and circle back to Matt Solis, who was asking about getting people to set appointments at the open house. We're having some trouble with that. So Matt, give me an example of someone that you're like, break it down for me. What do you think is causing the holdup with being able to schedule the appointment? What's going on with the circumstances surrounding that?
So this past Saturday, a couple walked in. I did the whole routine, and then at the end, I did the ABC script. Well, and they mentioned before I did the script, because when I asked them, "Are you currently working with a realtor?" and they said, "No, we're not, but we have a few friends that are realtors, so we'll probably be talking to them first." And I basically I didn't ignore that, but I still did my ABC script regardless, right? So,
of course.
Did the ABC script, and they seemed, oh wow, this guy actually wants to work with us. And then so I was like, when's a good time? Because their timeline was, I think March. They were like wanting to get serious about looking to buy, so they're not that far away. But I just couldn't get them to get an appointment. I did my ABC script. I'm trying to remember how they objected it, but they said, I think that they wanted to think about it or something like that, or maybe it was they were like, we're good for now, we're still just looking, kind of stuff like that. So yeah, and
that's okay, and that's going to happen. So let's talk about that for a moment. Now, there is a lot of control we have over the direction that the conversation is going to take. As an example, I was on a one-to-one coaching call with a student earlier this year, and she was relatively new to the industry. She didn't really have much going on, but she was starting to generate some momentum, but she was stuck in some feeling of being overwhelmed and had some fear of imperfection and some fear of the unknown that were combining each other, specifically with cold calling. Now, on cold calling, when I'm coaching someone or someone comes onto my team, you know, I work with agents of all levels. I work with agents that are brand new, that are just trying to get their first deal. I work with agents that are closing a few deals every now and then, and they want to learn how to create consistency. I work with agents that are real consistent and actually need to scale and create some time freedom for themselves. Now, if you're one of those agents that falls into the first category of, I really don't have anything going on and I'm not making money, I don't think you have the right to be too picky about how you want to go about making that money. I think you need to do everything, throw it all at the wall, see what sticks, and develop a skill set. So for example, someone comes up to me and they're already closing deals and they're like, I'm pretty much getting all my business through like open houses and networking and in-person things, and I'm closing a lot. I really want to maximize that. Okay. But if someone comes up to me and they say, well, I haven't closed anything, I have like 0 transactions under my belt and nothing in the pipeline, but I'm not going to cold call, and I'm not going to do open houses, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do that. I don't think they have the right to be that picky. I think you got to do everything. I think you got to invest in earth to orbit, do all the methods of lead generation, and see what works for you. So you do the cold calling, you do the open houses, you do the door. I mean, you do all of it. I'm not particularly crazy about cold calling. I have a skill set at it. I've closed deals with it. I did it until I didn't have to do it anymore. And then I focused on more in-person methods. And so she was really stuck on cold calling and she just didn't want to do it. And I was like, why? Like, what is the issue? Now, most people just fear rejection, and that's kind of the main motivator. And they also fear the unknown and not being good at it. And she said, well, you know, the biggest hesitation I have with it is I don't feel like I have control over where the conversation is going to go. Like every conversation is like a roll of the dice, depending on who's going to pick up the phone. And I told her that that is true, but not to the extent that you think it is. So I asked her, as an example, are there any sports that you really like and have developed a skill set at? She said, well, tennis. I like tennis. I said, cool. I'm a tennis player also. Now, when you first started playing tennis and you swing the racket, did you have any control over where the ball was going to go? And she was like, no, not really. And I was like, of course, right? You're looking over there and the ball goes over there, right? You go to serve and it goes over the fence, like for sure. That's what happens. But once you got better at playing tennis and then you got really good, did you then have control over where the ball is going to go? She said, well, yeah. I said, of course you did. When you got really good, you could say, I want the ball to go right there, about that far over the net with some spin on it. Zoom, and you can do exactly that. So it's not a roll of the dice because you developed a skill set to actually control the direction of the ball. Same thing with cold calling. Same thing with scripts, right? It's not as much of a roll of the dice with people incoming to your open house as you think it is. There is a lot of control that you have as you develop the skill set of scripts and objections that can give you control over the outcome. Now, that being said, there are still some times that it's just not going to work. And as an agent, especially a really motivated one like you, Matt, and a lot of people out there have this mindset that like there must be surely some magic combination of words and vocal inflection that when I say them will unlock the yes every single time. And again, the reality is that oftentimes that is true, and sometimes it just isn't. So in this instance, one of those times that I think there's just no way to overcome it is when there is a significant previous relationship with another agent. If you have someone whose best friend is an agent, or their mom or dad, or brother or sister, or son or daughter is an agent, you will not be able to overcome that. You just can't. All the best objection handlers in the world are most likely not going to overcome that. So for that specific instance, Matt, and knowing how much you implement what you learn and how frequently you and I communicate, because I feel like we talk at least a couple times a week in some coaching for your business. I would say in that instance, it was probably just a previous relationship that they knew you were great. They knew you work hard. They knew you'd probably do a great job, but their closest friends or agents, they've known them for decades and they're not going to go with someone else. And in that instance, it's out of your control. In that instance, it's out of your control. Now, let's talk about also the timeline thing. For some people that have issues with commitment, they're not going to get started on this journey until it is imminent. Now, for agents, we expect, we're getting into some mindset stuff now. We expect that everyone we talk to should think how we think. That's just natural, right? Like when you're a kid growing up, you assume everyone's family is just like yours because that's what you know. And so for a guy like Matt, who is very meticulous, thinks long game, always planning ahead, getting all his ducks in a row. He's an investor, so he better have his ducks in a row, right? When someone says, you know, March is when we really want to get serious, Matt's thinking, well, March is right around the corner. That's like, in real estate world, that's like right around the corner. We got to get you pre-qualified. We got to make sure the budget is good. We want to see some stuff. Maybe there's someone that needs a long lease back. I mean, we may be able to find you something right now that will close, that March is the time, you know, we really need to get started on this. And then when he presents the opportunity to make some type of commitment, that's when people's true levels of motivation really show. And motivated buyers are discovered, not created. And so when people will go into an open house, they're in it at that moment. So they're probably even telling themselves they're more motivated than they really are, because they're like, oh, we're going to be moving in X amount of months. Let's go to some open houses. And they're in the houses and they're like, oh, I'm getting excited. We're going to buy a house. Maybe we'll buy this house, right? Spoiler alert, 99% of people are not going to buy the house that you meet them in the open house. Okay. But they get all excited until it comes time to make a commitment. Even if that commitment is just, let's get together to talk about it. And so at that moment, the objection handlers really help. But if you handle the objection like a master and they're still not committing, all that means is their level of motivation is not what they disclose to you. And we need to, as agents, we need to be good with that. We need to expect that. We need to expect that people will not always be truthful with us, because that's the reality. And that's no reflection on you. It's just most people are like that. And so, Matt, when you have someone that comes in, I think in that instance, it was maybe the timeline was too far out and they had a previous relationship. And so sometimes you just can't overcome it. Or sometimes it might be like Kenneth, where you do a great job, you give them the ABC, you handle the objection. And at that moment, for whatever reason, because you don't know what's going on in their day or their mind, they're not ready to commit. But Kenneth, let me ask you, from the open house till the time they circled back with you and said, we want you to be our agent for 2 transactions, how much time passed?
Maybe 2 weeks.
Okay, cool. And I've told you all the story about my very first deal, that it was actually 6 weeks of being completely ghosted. I asked for the appointment. They weren't ready. And I just followed up 6 weeks. And then all of a sudden I got a very similar message that Kenneth got. Rob, we want you to come over tomorrow. Let's talk about listing and buying because we're ready to go. And so even not being able to set the appointment at the open house doesn't mean you won't get it eventually. It just means at that moment, they're not ready to set it. So before we get into some techniques on how you can increase your likelihood, I do just want to express to Matt and agents out there like Matt that are doing everything they're supposed to. It is not a reflection on you if you know you gave them the script, you took the off ramps, you deepened the relationship, you gave them the summary, they understand that you understand their situation, you've done the objection handlers, and you still can't set the appointment, and you've asked more than once. Then at that point, the universe is saying, hey, this wasn't meant to work out today, right now. Doesn't mean it won't work out in the long run, but you can't let that creep into your negative mindset, because you practiced, you did your best, and then you got to just move on. Otherwise, you're just going to kill yourself trying to, perseverate on the fact that it didn't work out. And so at that point, I would say, keep following up, see what happens. If there's that previous relationship in place, you might not be able to overcome it. Okay. So don't necessarily think of it so negatively on yourself if that's what you were doing. Okay. So now let's talk about some techniques that we use to implement to get the appointment right away. We start with the at the open house script. So who can tell me what is the first part of the at the open house script? What's the first thing you do? Someone walks through the door.
Introduce yourself.
Very good. You introduce yourself. So Matt, you're introducing yourself, I'm sure. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Hey, my name is Matt. Nice to meet you. They say their names. What do you do when they say their names?
Say again?
So you introduce yourself. They introduce themselves. You shake hands. They say their names.
Oh, gotcha.
What are you doing in here while they're saying their names?
I repeat it a couple times in my head, which is tricky, but I'm getting better at it.
That's right. It is tricky, but it's a skill set.
Just for like a second, just because it really makes a difference if I do it. Because then if I do it too much, then I'm not actually listening. And a couple of times I was like, wait, I missed whatever they said. Yeah. So it is tricky.
It is, but you get used to it the more you do it. It's a skill set, just like anything. The more you do it, the easier it gets. So Matt says, hey, I'm Matt. Hey, I'm Steve. And Steve's wife, Jane. Hey, Steve. Hey, Jane. Steve, Jane, Steve.
Especially
Jane,
when they have a kid, I'm like, gotta memorize all three. That'll be impressive.
That's right.
And
That's
then
right. Yes, you do.
Did it one time. It was like great, but yeah.
Yeah. And then when they're walking away and you're watching them walk around the house, same thing. You say their names. Right? Good. Matthew Wright, what do you have? You see your hand up.
Yeah, I was actually just going to talk about the follow-up, but you already kind of did that. Even if they have a friend or a family member who's a realtor that they tell you, sometimes that's just closing the doors and I don't want to talk to you right now. Is what I found. I had that happen, and it took 4 months to convert my very first listing from I have a friend who's a real estate agent. And,
interesting.
Got my very first listing from it. Because I continued to follow up 4 months later. So to me, I feel like, yes, there is some truth to that. But at the same time, if they conversate with you, I feel like it's just a way to kind of put that wall up. Because if they know what they're doing, they walk into an open house and they're just window shopping, they know what's going to happen. They know they're going to get followed up. This is not their first open house. So if they tell you, I have a friend who's a real estate agent, but they continue to talk with you, keep following up. Unless they tell you a rep agreement's signed, I'd say keep following up.
Yep.
I just did that, and it was a win for me.
That's awesome. That's great feedback, Matt. And proof that just because someone says they have a friend doesn't mean they necessarily do. Or even if they do, it doesn't mean that you can't get that deal. I have found that sometimes, and this has happened to me too, where they try to use the friend and then they come back and they say they just didn't have the time, or they really just do this part-time. Which is another objection handler that we give, right, in the Earth to Orbit program, is asking, do they do this full-time or part-time? So that's great feedback, Matthew. Thank you. Don't be discouraged. So you repeat the names, okay? Now, what's the next thing you do after you exchange names? You're memorizing their names. What's the next part of the at the open house formula?
What I do, it's not on the Earth to Orbit formula, but my first question that I find works well is, so what brought you into the open house today? And then off ramps, flow with the conversation. And then I usually do, where are you at in your home buying journey? Mm-hmm. Which could include, are you actively looking? No, I'm sorry. I switched that. I keep switching them. Would you say you're just browsing, or are you actively looking for a home? That's always one I try and make sure I get. Mm-hmm. And then, or do you live in the area? Are you from out of town? Yeah, those are my three typically.
Yeah. And that's great. And Matt, that is 100% part of the at the open house script in the Earth to Orbit program, because the first thing you do is ask that icebreaker open-ended question. And in the at the open house script, I give a few examples, and you hit one perfectly. What brings you into the open house? That's a nice open-ended question. Are you local, or are you visiting from out of town? That's one I like, right? Is this the first open house you've been to today? Any one of those that are good open-ended questions that will elicit a response, that's what you want to do. You don't just want to come in, are you working with an agent, right? And another benefit about starting with an open-ended question is usually the first thing they say is what's most important to them. It's the first thing on their radar. So you want to take note of like what they say in the order that they say it in. But Matt, you're following the formula beautifully, right? What brings you into the open house today? Are you just browsing or are you actively looking? So right now, at that moment, he's asking pre-screening questions and Matt's taking off ramps. So Matt, let's remind everyone, what is an off ramp?
Anything that's non-real estate related.
That's right.
Me personally, I'm getting better at it, but you really have to be curious. Because sometimes they'll just go by but you really have to like catch them and force yourself to ask about them. It really does make a big difference.
Yes. And you have to be curious and you have to be actively what?
Actively listening. Actively
listening. That's right. That's 100%. And so, Matt, I would, Kenneth, what you got?
So when I take the off ramps, once they, we get done talking in the front, they start looking at the house. As they're walking by, I always ask them, how's your day going? Just a quick little something as they're walking and looking. And that's how, take some more off ramps and going that way as they're walking around. It's not real estate. It's just they're looking, ask how their day is.
Yeah. So one thing I would recommend to you, Matt, is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but based on our conversation right now, it seems like when they come in, you have these questions in your mind that you're going to ask them. You're going to ask them this, you're going to ask them if they're.
I have them in my back pocket, but right. I let it flow. Like I do try and ask if they're from the area. Like I want to know before I let them tour, do they live around here?
Right.
And I also make sure I ask like, where are you at in your home buying journey? But I let it be, like if it's not like they say something and then I like ignore what they said and say my next question. Like I definitely let that conversation continue. And then if it hits a wall, boom, I have my next question ready,
Okay.
So that's
good.
how I do it.
Yeah. So make sure we all think of it this way. The first half of there's two times you're going to converse with these people. It's when they come in and when they're on the way out. And when they're wrapping up, that's when you're going to book the appointment. And so the first half is really just about establishing rapport via off ramps. That is the main goal. I wouldn't spend too much time trying to understand the ins and outs of their real estate journey. I would recommend that you put that on the back half of the conversation after they've had time to view the house, because again, 99% of the time, they're not going to buy the house they're in. They're pretty much going to be walking out and saying goodbye. If they come up to talk to you at the end, that's a good sign. That's a good sign that they're interested. They want to potentially work with you. But usually what happens is they're just on the way out. They say goodbye, or they don't even say goodbye. And at that point, you go up to them and you say, hey, so, Steve and Jane, I see you're on the way out. So let me ask, what don't you see here that you're looking for? Because you can assume they're not interested in that one, right? So the back half is where I like to spend most of the time getting to know their situation regarding real estate. And that's when you can start formulating the ABC script that you're going to use, the action, benefit, commitment. The first half, I would say you could take Kenneth, how's your day going? Or you could say, where are you at right now? Are you from out of town, or are you local? I like more not real estate related, just open-ended conversation at the beginning, because that's when you're establishing rapport. Now, here's another reason why that's really helpful. So my director of sales on my team, his focus is helping me manage the agents day to day, and he's also a recruiting machine. So one thing he actually does is he goes to open houses. So he doesn't host open houses anymore. He goes to open houses looking for agents that might be a good fit for our company. Because if you're agents that are hosting an open house that's not their listing, because if you're hosting an open house for a listing that's not yours, you're trying to grow your business. And that's what we do. We help people grow their business. And so he will strategically look up agents that are hosting an open house that are not their listing, and he will hit 3, 4, or 5 of those open houses in a day, go in and strike up a conversation with that agent. And through that conversation, we'll see, is this agent worth talking to recruit? Because we look for Navy SEALs, not the Navy, A players only. So if we see an agent half-assing their way through an open house and they're on their phone and they don't even look up at them, he's not going to bother trying to recruit them, right? And it's incredible when we have our daily training. We train every day, and it's always Monday where we talk about the previous week, and he always talks about the open houses. And it is staggering, the stories that he'll share, because 19 times out of 20, the open house agent is completely worthless. They're completely worthless. Either they're not paying attention and he comes in and he's like, hey, how's it going? My name's Austin. And they're like, yeah. Or he told me this one.
Really?
He said, yeah, he told me this one. He goes into an open house this past weekend and he opens the door, and he can't, first of all, he can't see the guy that's hosting the open house. He's sitting at the kitchen table, which is, I guess, around a corner. And he knocks on the door, and Austin says, hello. And the guy says, hello. Okay, that's it. And Austin walks into the kitchen, and there's the guy. His computer is open. His laptop is open. He's not even making eye contact with Austin. So he doesn't know, is Austin an agent? Is he a buyer? Who is he? And he says, what is your name? Or what is your timeline? And he's not even looking at him. Yeah. He tells me these kind of stories all the time. The vast majority of agents have no idea how to be personable, how to host an open house, how to talk to people. It's incredible how many agents are just terrible at talking to people. That's why how we host open houses is so important, right?
Well, that's good news for all of us then, right?
It is. And that leads me to my point. That leads me to my point to think about when people are coming in. That's when I just want to establish a relationship and let them know I'm not some like used car salesman pushy dude, because chances are this isn't the only open house they're going to. And most agents are really bad. That's the reality. So when they go to open houses, they're used to being pushed. They're used to business cards being shoved in their face. They're used to, are you working with an agent? Do you want to make an offer on this house? Can I send you some listings? Right? No effort to get to know them, just pushy, 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 pushy. That's what they're used to, because that's what most agents do. So your job on the first half of the open house conversation is to make them understand, I am not that type of agent. I want to get to know you, and just, you're taking those off ramps, non-real estate related activity. So the front half, I like are you just visiting or are you just out of town? Because that's not related to real estate, and that's not giving them the impression that I'm trying to sell them something. So Matt, I would just try A/B testing some more open-ended questions, not necessarily related to real estate, in the front half of the conversation.
Sorry. So the question about, so you actively looking to buy, or are you just browsing? I keep switching it. It's supposed to be actively at the end, right? Because you want that to be the last part, because they tend to agree with the second part of the question. So the question, are you just browsing, or are you actively looking to buy? Would you say that is too real estate related? The way I've kind of modified that question is, I like to ask, where are you at in your home buying journey? But I agree with you what you're saying. Now that you say it, I'm realizing, like, yeah, coming out with that initially, it's like, it's a little like, it needs to, that maybe needs to be at the back half, I would say.
I agree with you. So even if you're saying, are you actively, are you just browsing, or are you actively looking to buy? To the person that you're asking that question to, they're thinking, this guy's trying to think if I'm going to be a paycheck for him in the near future.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And even though you are a people person, that could be the way they perceive that question, if that's what you come out of the gate with. And so, are you just visiting, or are you from out of town? Do you live around here? Like something that's just, how's your day going? Right. Or something like that. How's you enjoying this beautiful weather? Right. I mean, anything that's open-ended, not directly related to real estate. It's not threatening. They don't put their guard up. And then you take off ramps. So the beauty of doing it that way is the front half of the conversation, you don't necessarily need to worry about. Now, keep in mind, like, you do need to do some pre-screening, but I recommend that's on the second conversation, on the back half. The front half is really just about, removing the pressure that makes you feel like you need to ask these questions. And then you can just relax and just focusing on getting to know them, on taking those off ramps. So now you're not necessarily worried about, like the questions you have to ask or that the things you want to know. You can only listen and engage in conversation and take those off ramps. And it's going to be easier. And you do have to actively listen, right? You're Matt, you have to be curious. You have to actively listen so that, because those off ramps come and go. It's almost like when you're driving, sometimes you have off ramps that are like exit 26 and big lights when they're like, we are all about our pets. Like that's an easy off ramp. But sometimes you ever see the sign that says like hidden driveway? And if you're not really focusing on it, you drive by it, you're like, where was it? I didn't even see it. I was looking for it. Right. So, and sometimes the off ramps happen that quick. Oh yeah, no, it's cool. We just got into town. Oh, who's we? I don't see anyone else here. Right. Hey, that's a good
I
one.
didn't even catch that when you said
Exactly.
it.
Right. For sure. Or, like, oh, we're just like, we want to make sure we have a good school district for the kids. Oh, kids, how many kids do you have? Plural. So they have more than one, right? What are your kids into? Like, do they like sports? Like, what do they like to do? Ask a question that piggybacks off of the question you just asked.
That would be a great exercise with your accountability partner. Just practice giving them off ramps and see if they can take it, if they catch it, or because I missed the first one. I would have thought to say, oh, who's we? Like, that's great. That's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So sometimes, it's one word that can be an off ramp. Oh yeah, we just got back. Oh, where'd you go? Right. Just got back from vacation. How was the vacation? Oh my gosh, how long were you there? What were some things that you did there? I've heard this and this. Is that true? Right. You can ask 5 questions about one off ramp. Oh yeah. And after this, we're going to go fishing. Oh, wow. How long have you been fishing? Where are you going fishing? What kind of fish do you like to catch? Do you throw them back or do you eat them? How long have you been doing that? Who are you going with? Right. Like you can just keep going down the rabbit hole, but really actively listening to those, everything they say, and how can you get to know more about that thing?
And I think the thing that will help make it even more personable is, and also not making it feel like an interview. If they do share something, I would not be afraid to interject just a little bit about yourself. For instance, if you see like they like to work out, you mentioned, oh, I love to work out too. Instead of only asking about them, maybe mention just a small thing about yourself to help make it, because they're not going to really ask about you, right? Like
that's right. And if I would say you're correct, if there's common ground there, don't make something up or be untruthful to force common ground. But if it's there, as an example, one of my first transactions, we were able to set the appointment the next day and get a $15,000 commission because they came in. And I don't remember exactly how the conversation came up, but they mentioned something about their cats and their pets, and they were just completely obsessed with their cats. And Katie and I didn't have kids yet. And so we were completely obsessed with our dogs. We still are, but kids take precedence over pets. Once you have kids, it's just how good. We look at our photo reel and we're like, dog, 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 baby. Right. But our pets were the common ground. And we just kept talking about pets. And then she works at a company that makes all natural, organic, high-end pet food. What's that like? Can we get some for our dog? Right. And so we had that common ground, or you see someone that you have a commonality with, for sure. You should mention that, because when people have things they have in common, right? People want to do business with, especially with people that are like them, then for sure that's going to deepen the rapport, right? I have an agent on my team that is a veteran. And so at his last open house, he was able to schedule an appointment as they were talking, and they found that they were both veterans, and that was a good common ground with them. People ask me all the time, did I serve? Because I guess they have that look. And I'm like, I did not, right? Because I'm not gonna, the opportunity's there, but I would never lie about something like that. So make sure that you're always truthful in your commonalities, but yeah, if it's there, take advantage of it. So I think the front half, Matt, again, this is a little tweak that could make a big difference, is just ask open-ended, non-real estate related questions. If you ask someone, are you browsing or actively looking? Again, that tells them this guy's trying to figure out what to do with me and kind of where to sort me, right? Versus just getting to know them. Then you just establish that rapport. You don't even ask them, because the thing is, they're expecting that question. They're expecting you to ask them something about that's going to end in a paycheck in your pocket. And when you don't yet, it's like, oh, it was like, this is just a nice guy. Right. And then before the conversation goes too long, right at the right time, you say, well, hey, again, my name is Matt. Please feel free to look around. I'll be right here. Just let me know if you have any questions. He didn't try to sell me. He didn't try to ask me about my timeline. He's just super resourceful. Is there anything you'd like to know about the house before you take a look around? No? Okay, go ahead. Let me know if you have any questions. Boom. Then on the way out, that's when you start having, so I know y'all are headed out to do some fishing, but let me ask real quick, what about this house isn't really doing it for you? It doesn't seem like it's really checking all your boxes. So what are you looking for that you don't see here? Oh, okay. And so how soon, like if you were to find something like that, how soon would you move soon, or are you just kind of browsing for now? Oh, your lease is up in X amount of months, or you're going to be moving here in 6 months. And especially if you know that now is not the time, but later is, I'll insert something that is very non-pressure. Like, well, obviously you're not going to be moving for 6 months, so it wouldn't make sense for me to ask you to show you some homes now. I'm sure you're getting that a lot. I'm not going to ask you to do that. You're not even close to being ready to move. But what I would love to do, if I can make a recommendation, yes, great. Let's just set up a phone call, maybe for a week or two, or a Zoom call, just to talk about the process of what it's like to buy a home here in this state, because you've bought a home before, but not here, just so you can kind of understand what to expect down the road when you are ready on your timeline. Because if their timeline isn't around the corner, I will emphasize the fact that I understand that we're not in a rush. We're going to do this thing on your timeline, but I would love to be a resource for you. And that also sends a message, hey, I'm not pushy. I just want to help you. And so that's also something that will be very disarming, that will make them feel good about it. Remember that you're competing with all the other pushy, don't know how to form a relationship realtors out there. So we have to work extra hard to overcome that and use the proven and tested sales techniques that are going to close appointments, yet without allowing people to feel like they're being pressured or sold or screened.
No, I like that a lot. For people that are further out, setting up a phone call and making that, because what I have been doing is if they're further than 4, 5, 6 months out, I just don't even try and schedule anything. I just say, okay, well, I guess I'll follow up with you. I don't even know what I say. It's like, but that's good. Like, hey, could I make a recommendation? You're pretty far out, but I'd love to show you what the home buying process is like, and show you some, I don't know, I'd have to work on that, but that's a good idea to do a phone call.
And so remember, gang, and as you take some notes here, as we're getting ready to wrap up, this is a great session. Short term, I would classify as less than 3 months. At that time, you want to set the buyer consult, you want to connect them with the lender, probably want to start seeing some homes. 3 to 6 months, that's that medium term pipeline. 6 months plus, that's the long term, year out, very long term. And so if they're in that medium term, 3 to 6 months, I don't recommend you try to schedule a buyer consult, because it's just going to seem too pushy. Unless they're really wanting to, but more often than not, they're not going to be sending those signals. But what you do want to do then is still set some type of more informal appointment that just shows you are a resource. You are not pushy. You are an expert, so that you're at least establishing. Remember that the vast majority of people are going to work with the first agent that they meet with face-to-face, not necessarily the first agent they meet face-to-face, maybe at an open house, but the first agent they actually like sit down and have a conversation with. Statistically, that is going to be the agent they go with. And so if they're 3 to 6 months out, telling them, look, I don't think it's the right time to like set a formal appointment and start showing homes, because you're not ready for that yet. And I'm sure you've got enough going on with your life. We're all very busy. But may I make a recommendation that would be super helpful? What I'd love to do is just, we could meet. If they're local, let's just meet for coffee. If they're not local, let's just have a phone call or a Zoom call sometime in the next couple of weeks. I'd love to just learn more. I'd love for you to teach me just what you're looking for. and just get to know the situation a little better. I mean, obviously this is going to move on your timeline. I'm not here to rush you, but I would love to just be able to wrap my head around more about what you're looking for, so I can just maybe answer any questions you have, educate you on the market here a little bit, make sure you understand the home buying process here so that you know what to expect when the time comes later, and just be a resource for you, just real informal. So would a weekday or weekend work best for that phone call, or for us to just meet for a coffee? And you're just expressing potentially down the line, your timeline. I just want to help. And that will be huge, because at the end of that meeting, that they're going to know that, like, wow, like what a guy, this is going to be the guy that we work with. And at that point, at the end of the meeting, you could say, hey, you're still way far out. I'd love to, offer to set you up on a search so you can at least see what type of homes are available. You can start keeping your finger on the pulse of the market. So when the time does come, you at least have a bit of understanding of maybe what will be available to you. And you just kind of keep dripping on the value. And now they're getting the home search every day. They're seeing your face every day. Even if they don't look at the homes, they're getting that email every morning at 8 a.m., right? Home search for Steve and Jane from Matt. Oh yeah, Matt, that's the dude. You get them on your newsletter once a month. They're getting your email newsletter, right? So you're just dripping the value without being pressured. So to summarize, we started this session with Matt saying he wants to be able to set more appointments on the spot. And we know he's doing a great job. So what we're talking about are little things that'll make a big difference. So we talked about not asking real estate specific pre-screening questions on the front half, because that could make people feel like their arms are up, right? They got to put up their walls, their defense. I don't want to be sold. I just want to window shop through this house right now. Because that's all people want to do when they open houses. They're window shopping. The vast majority of people are not ready to buy a house. They're just window shopping. Let them window shop and just be really nice, right? Like when you go into the store and someone says, can I help you? And you say no. That's what you're doing if you're asking them too many real estate related questions. What if you go into the store and someone says, hey, how's your day going? Great. Yeah, day's going good, right? I just got back from, and they just ask you questions. They don't even ask you if they can help you about the product. And they say, well, feel free to look around and let me know if you have any questions. You're going to go, whoa, didn't see that coming. Like, can you imagine going to a car dealership and that's the conversation you have? And then you just look around, right? Because every time you go to a car dealership, you're expecting someone to sell you something you don't want. But what if someone just asks you open-ended questions and establishes some rapport with you and then says, let me know if you have any questions? You'd actually probably be more inclined to go ask a question when you have one, because they didn't make you feel pressured. So I think first half, just focus on establishing that rapport. Open-ended, non-real estate related questions. You ask your pre-screening questions on the back half. I would imagine that over time, you should see those conversion rates start going up. And keep us updated if you do, or if you don't, so we can all learn either way. All right, gang. Fantastic. Rosita, you got one before we go?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Rob, but what after the first part, you have to ask them before they start walking around to sign up, right?
Yes. Yeah. You want to ask them to, I mean, I like asking them to sign in on the front half. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I usually do it after all the rapport building, like right before they go look. Hey, before you look around, would you mind signing in? I find that works best, as opposed to right when they walk in the door. But it's just
yeah. So what was that your question, Rosita? Like, when do you ask them?
No. That's fine. That's fine. This is exactly what your script is saying. First, starting with these questions, kind of warm up questions, and then before they start looking around, you say, "Hey, before you go, because for security purposes, could you please?"
That's right. That's right.
Sign.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
And then remember, on the top of the sign-in sheet or on your digital sign-in on your tablet or whatever, I recommend you have the words "owners require everyone to sign in." That takes it off of you, right? And then if they give you any pushback, look, I'm sure you can understand. I'm just doing my job here. You know, the owners just want to know who's coming through their house. I'm sure you can understand and would want the same. Not going to spam you, not selling your info or anything. But owners require everyone to sign in. That's what we put. And once I did that one simple thing, very, very minimal pushback.
Yeah, I'm glad the sign-in conversation came up, because that was kind of what I wanted to say is once you've had the first half of that conversation and they sign in, you're going to know if they're working with a realtor or not, right? So you know who you can spend your time with and who you can't. But I also want to take that one step further, Rob, and something I've done, and maybe I'm wrong for this, but even if they say they have a realtor, one question I like to ask is, who are you working with? You know, I see you working with a realtor. Who are you working with? I'd like to follow up with them, maybe tomorrow or the next day. You know, see if they're interested in the house. Now, this tells me two things. One, if they have to think about who they're working with, chances are they don't have a contract in place. So,
Whoa.
I've actually landed a few clients that way because they were basically house shop. They know how this rodeo works, right? So they have a realtor so that you don't contact them, though they're not really working with anybody. So that's I've learned that at least in this area, we have a lot of house shoppers that come in this area. And our open houses have been extremely busy, the ones that we've done. I mean, we've had over 150 people attend an open house just back in June. So, I mean, when I tell you it gets busy, that's why we usually do 2 people in an open house, Rob, just so you know.
That's amazing. We are not having that type of attendance around here at all.
Not right now. Not right now.
Yeah.
It definitely slowed down. But when I started asking that question, you know, you see that they registered, so you know they're working with the realtor, right? Well, who are you working with? I'd like to follow up with them in the next couple of days.
Wow.
And
Dude, that's amazing. That's the beauty of this mastermind. Like, I just learned something there from Matt. Like, what a great way, instead of saying, like, do you have a representation agreement, which you still want to know, but who are you working with? And if they have the hesitation, they probably don't have a rep agreement, right?
Right.
Wow,
if they
that's
put
awesome.
a name right out to you, they're obviously right in front of them. They're talking to them every day or every couple of weeks. I mean, but if they have to really think about it, the next question is going to be, well, do you have a representation agreement? Because if they're thinking about it, they're not actively working with that realtor. You know what I mean? So, or at least it doesn't seem like they are.
Yeah, that is, dude, love that. We can all, dude, Matt just dropped. That's a good one, man. That's great. Going to add that to the arsenal for sure. Great stuff. Thanks for sharing that.
And also, Rob, sometime when they say they work with a friend, you can say, how are you going to feel to disclose all your financial situation with your friend? Are you going to feel good or not? So sometimes people doesn't want to disclose, even with the same kind of community, kind of community, they prefer not to work with because it's too much to disclose. So it's sometimes this is work.
Yep, that's great stuff, man. Love it. That's what the mastermind's all about. Hey, this has been another episode of the Impossible to Fail Real Estate Mastermind. Thanks for coming. Make sure to register for this mastermind. If you're watching it, be here. It's free. Look at the quality of information that we're getting here. It's amazing. Gang, I do want
Rob,
you to
by
know,
the way, are we going to continue mastermind after New Year?
that was going to be my next thing. We are going to have the mastermind after the new year. This is the last mastermind call of 2022. So we're going to be on break, and then the next one will resume on Tuesday, January 3rd.
Oh, January.
All right.
Okay. All right.
All right, y'all have a wonderful income producing day. Let's crush it the rest of 2022. See you next year.